Welcome to the Stories with Traction podcast. I'm your host, Matt Zahn. Thank you for joining us as we uncover how stories are one of the most important aspects of your business. We'll talk about struggles, victories, and how you can utilize strategic storytelling to inspire those around you to action. Enjoy this episode. I am so excited for this episode because today I am joined by Sean Carter, who is the president and CEO of NEACH, the New England Automated Clearinghouse Association. So the reason why I want to have Sean on is because I gave a workshop a few months back in Salem, Massachusetts, and Sean was in the audience and he just got it. Like every concept we were going over, Sean got it. And it was so awesome to see someone implementing story strategy and messaging and really tying that back into the vision. So I had to have him on the podcast to dive a little bit deeper. So before we roll into some of the things that Sean had mentioned to me during this workshop, I want to get into his background. So Sean, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Matt. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. So thank you for your time. I know you're an extremely busy person, so I very much appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we dive into just story concepts and some of the things that you had mentioned to me that I really appreciated, talk to us a little bit about your background, let's start off with what you do right now in your current role, and then we could talk more about your origin story. But what do you currently do in your role?
So currently I'm president and CEO of both NEACH and NEACH Payments Group. So NEACH is a nonprofit trade association where we're helping financial institutions and companies kind of drive emerging technologies and payments and making sure that they're remaining safe and in compliance with all applicable regulations. NEACH Payments Group is our for-profit arm. That's where we actually go out and do risk assessments, audits of payment channels, payment strategy, helping people just get from where they are today to where they want to be for their customers and for their long-term success. And so my main role here is to ensure that we're driving at our mission in the nonprofit, which is, again, everything we do is member-based, right? It's all about giving the members a place where they can go for resources, education, training, someone to talk to. That's what we're trying to drive at. And on the for-profit side, we're just trying to make sure that our products are keeping up with the expectations of regulators and what the FIs need so that they can feel confident after they go through an audit with us or a risk assessment that they've gotten great value from that. They're going to learn through the process, and we're also going to give them some recommendations that will help them improve on what they're currently doing.
So you have a lot going on.
That's a busy time.
Going on.
Yes.
So how in the world did you get into that role?
So this is a crazy story how I started at NEACH. So I was always working two jobs. So I was working at a milk company famous on the North Shore, Westling Creamery, which is now Hood because everybody gets bought out these days. But it was a very famous milk company. I was working in the accounting department, accounts payable. And we were working on a project to electronify our bill payment, right? So this is back in 1996. So this is not the norm for businesses yet. And so I was also working at a pizza place, and my boss at the pizza place was working here at NEACH. And I was telling him what we were doing. And he told me, oh, NEACH, we got an opening and we're all into electronic payments. That's what we're about. So I kind of came here just do accounting for NEACH. And then I just fell in love with regulation and risk management and making sure that, if you want to move money from A to B, that there's a safe and sound way for people and that there's plenty of choice for people to do that. And so I worked here, from 1998 on. And then in 2016, our CEO was retiring. And I put my name in for the CEO position. And lucky enough that the board trusted me to take NEACH and NEACH Payments Group into the future. So that's kind of how I got here, but it really started because of a relationship that I had at the pizza place. So it's very strange, winding road, and very thankful to have been able to come here because I found a career out of it and a passion for payments and technology.
Okay. So you said something that I've never heard another human being utter. You said, I fell in love with regulation.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that?
So I found it interesting that I like things that are fair, right? So one of my favorite
Sure.
sports, baseball, softball, everybody gets the same amount of strikes, same amount of outs. What I found in regulation for payments, at least in the payment system rules, is that everybody has to play by the same rules. Whether
Okay.
you're Bank of America or the credit union up the street, everybody is given a set of standards, and here's how you need to play. How they achieve compliance can be different depending on how much automation or technology they want to use, but it's the most fair thing that you will see is payment system regulation. It's everybody, specifically like in an ACH world, you have to follow the same rules. So Matt's bank and my bank and Matt's credit union, mine credit, we're all processing the same way, the same cutoff, same funds availability, all of that. It's to me, I found that to be. I didn't think it was that way, right? When I went into it, and then when you realize, like, this is so fair, right? And so when
Sure.
people say, "Oh, we can't compete in a payment system because such and such bank can do this," it's like, no, you're not competing because you're choosing not to compete. You can do exactly what they're doing. There's a way for you to do it. So I just like the fairness about it. I know some would, like you said, regulation. There's a difference between payment system rules and regs versus like federal government and how the IRS may
Sure.
treat one person over the other. So I'm not saying that's fair. I don't want to cause a revolt on your podcast, but for what we're playing in there, it's extremely fair how it's mediated out. And everybody gets a say in it. All the rule proposals were open for public comment. So if you don't like something, you had your chance to give a say. So I just find that something about it has always made me really happy to be a part of it.
Sure. Yeah. So I appreciate you mentioned that. So there's a few things to unpack with that. So the first, I really appreciate what you had talked about regarding rules, and you had mentioned sports. So everyone listening has their own sport that they're into or their own activity that they're into. And without rules, it would be complete and utter chaos. It wouldn't even be fun. So for me, I'm a big football guy. So, you're using your baseball and my football. If there weren't rules and the players could do whatever they wanted to do, the fans would lose their mind because there'd be no guiding principles, no guidelines for what winning and losing even means. So back to your point on compliance, it does help us function as a society. So absolutely, it has an incredible need. Now, from the storytelling perspective, I think compliance is interesting. So I was doing a workshop about a month ago out in Orange County, California, and I was doing a processing session with this one gentleman, and he brought compliance up. And one of the things that he said, I'm really frustrated right now because I'm having a hard time inspiring my staff when it comes to implementing these different elements of compliance. And what I had said to him is I had said, focus on your clients right now that you're helping with these compliance issues because they get to carry out their mission. They get to carry out what they're interested and passionate about as an organization. So this gentleman was a CEO of a company. It's a big accounting firm, and they're really focused on all these different elements of compliance. And I said, as your team gets frustrated about this, share stories regarding what your clients are doing in the community, the good that they're doing, because if it wasn't for you handling this compliance, they wouldn't be able to operate as a business and they wouldn't be able to carry out their mission. So he got really excited. He actually sent me a message after this, and he said he started inserting his clients as the hero of the stories that he's sharing with his team, just to build up that morale and create that culture of, hey, we're not just doing this for compliance sake. We're doing this to help our clients so that they can spread their mission. And Sean, I know you get this because we had multiple conversations a while back about this, the importance of messaging and storytelling and really connecting with one's team. So I want to dive into that a little bit more, because a lot of people may hear compliance and regulation and they may think boring or they may think frustrating. How do you inspire your staff to continue to keep on keeping on when it comes in the storytelling realm?
Yeah, so one of the things, we have a really recent example. I mean, last March, the whole world was thrown for a loop with COVID. Our staff had the normal people pressure that everyone did. What's my family? Is everybody okay? Plus, you have a job to do, right? And one of the things that about that whole pandemic was the role that our member financial institutions played, the payment system played in making sure people got those payments from the government. I mean, that's life changing, right? So if somebody's not doing that, somebody doesn't eat, somebody doesn't get, somebody lost their job because nothing they did. COVID just disrupted their industry. They lost their job. They need an unemployment payment. That's moved through the ACH network. If everybody does it right, your money's there in the morning. You can use your debit card. You can have your mortgage payments coming out. There's no interrupt to you. So we had a number of things that we were doing as an organization that reaffirmed our mission every day. It was almost like a rebirth for a lot of what we were doing because, NEACH has been around since 1978 and we don't sell a tangible thing, right? Everything that we sell is a feeling. Like advocacy is a feeling that somebody's helping you. And we got to show that in spades with our membership. And we kept reminding ourselves every day, the importance of this, the importance of people making sure that we're not wasting government money so that you handle payments to the deceased individuals properly, right? This is taxpayer money that people have to worry about. There was so much around that time that it was so easy to keep people focused on the mission because every day there was a story being told of what we were doing, what we were a part of, right? So, and I think, I talk with a lot of people at bank operations and, you don't think that job necessarily is the coolest thing in banking, right? Because you got the cash management guys, you got the CEOs, the lenders, they're out golfing. But literally, the operations people at financial institutions keep the economy moving, right? They're the one processing your payments. They're the ones making sure that there's no fraud on your accounts. And so I think for those people, they got jolted by some of the stories and the stuff they were seeing on our website because you start to realize the impact that you're having. And everybody wants to feel like they make an impact, right? That's why you get up every day, right? It's not just to put food on the table, right? I feel for people that are doing that every day just to cover their bills, right? You should feel like when you go to work that what you're doing matters. And we were able to see it day in and day out just from an organization. And I think because we had gone through that, then when I was in your session, that's why everything clicked for me. Because I had just seen it happen. I saw our participation in our organization for our membership peaked to like 2007 levels when we had a ton of new rules and all this stuff going on. So I saw it. It was kind of like a perfect mix to have then run into you after seeing what was happening. And then when you started talking, I said, that's what we've been doing. We've been storytelling since March of last year. I couldn't tell you what we were doing until you talked. And then I was like, yes, that's exactly what we've been doing since March and continued on. And we're doing it better now because of some of the things you trained us on. But yeah, that's to me, it's right there, right? The success we're having as an organization right now is literally tied to what happened through our storytelling last March.
Awesome. So there's so much to unpack with what you said. So one of the things that you mentioned is an impact. Okay. So everyone listening to this can point to frustrations regarding the talent war. Every time I talk to a business leader across the country and I ask them, what's the biggest challenge that's faced right now? Every single one says the talent war. That is the biggest challenge that they have. Back to your point, Sean, regarding impact, you have waves and waves of millennials now in leadership positions and organizations across the country. And they've taken multiple surveys asking these new leaders, what's the number one thing you want to get out of your career? And constantly on these surveys, impact, that word that you used, impact is at the top across the board. They want to have an impact. So I want people listening to really process what Sean said regarding this story. He didn't just talk about the different habits that his team was going through. He didn't just talk about, hey, they realized if they want to if they want to have jobs, they have to do this. No, it's such a bigger mission. You had mentioned about people staying in their home and people eating and these payments being processed. Like, this is people's livelihoods that are on the line. And it's such a powerful rally cry. That is what creates, as you know, Sean, an incredible company culture of storytelling that keeps people engaged and active and carrying out that mission. I hear this all the time about individuals leaving organizations for more pay. Like, that comes up all the time. And what's interesting when I hear that is my background's in politics. Like, I was in the political arena for over a decade. Every person in the political, unless you're working for a super PAC, everyone in the political arena is making half, if not 1/3 of what they can make in the private sector. So why in the world would they want to do that? They do it because they see the mission and vision of the politician they're working for is so big that they're willing to work harder, longer hours, and for a heck of a lot less pay than in the private, because the mission is big. So my challenge to everyone listening to this, in a leadership role like Sean, that you are president and CEO of your organization, my challenge to you is to focus more on these stories, focus more on the vision. Don't just focus on your core principles as an organization or your core values. Focus on the story that exemplifies those values and that mission. And Sean, I think you did that exceptionally well. So thank you for sharing that. So is there anything in your background, whether it was schooling or whether it was other jobs that you've had, that positioned you to understand the importance of sharing these stories and really like connecting with your team and communicating? Was there anything that you feel set you up for that?
Yeah. So one of the things I talked to you about when I met you, a lot of people don't publicly proclaim this. I love network marketing. So you think Amway, Market America, Viseo. I love the idea that anybody can start a business and have a digital franchise. And when you think about that realm, right, it's about being a leader, right, building teams and your sales organization. And but one of the things about network marketing, again, when I was sitting in that room with you, Matt, it came to me. I've been dabbling in it for a long time. Me and my wife do some stuff together. And I realized at that moment that network marketing is all about storytelling, right? It's not the product, right? I can buy vitamins from you. I can go to GNC. I can go to CVS. Why do you buy a vitamin from someone that has started their own small business? Because you're a friend, you want to support them, right? Because you know their story. You know that they've had a struggle, that they've been stuck at a job, or there's something that drove them to network marketing. If you're close to them, you probably understand why they did it. Right. And so the whole industry is based upon you being able to say to somebody, hey, I'm making a difference in my life. I wasn't happy what I was doing, or I need to make a little money because my kids are going to college, whatever somebody's reason is. There's a story for every person that signs up for one of these companies. Nobody just signs up because you ask them to. If that was the case, everybody be a millionaire in network marketing, right? And in most cases, you get shunned from friends sometimes. Nobody picks up the phone, right? Because, the world has trained us to think that that's a bad industry, which it's not. Separate podcast. I'll go into that. But it is about connecting with people and making sure that, everybody talks about the why, right? The Simon Sinek, what's your why? But, having your why is great, but you got to be able to tell somebody about your why in a story, right? You can't just say, I love my kids. Everyone loves their kids, right? You have to have a story as to why you're doing this for your kids, right? So if I said to you, Matt, I love my kids, right? Or I want to make sure my kids have access to the best education. I don't want them to have to worry about working through college. Which of those two is going to draw you in? It's obviously the second one, because
Sure.
I'm telling you what my motivation is, what do I see for my kids, right? You could read that in a little book. And so I found that day again when I met you, it was like, man, I've been at all these network marketing meetings over the years. And I even said to you, they should all invite you out to their conferences, because you would be the one that would help every single person grow. Because what they need to be able to do is communicate not only their personal mission, right, but why are we all doing this? Why are we helping each other get access to the healthier products and all of that? There's stories everywhere to be told there. And if somebody could harness that the way you could, and if you could bottle that up for people, especially any leadership position, because you're a leader in network marketing, you have a team, you're a leader as a CEO. Again, I can't just say, oh, NEACH is going to pay you more money. We can't. We can't. We're a nonprofit trade. We can't outspend people for talent. But what I can do is tell you why we're in business, what we do for people, and how your role at the company is going to impact the future of payments, right? And maybe that's not a difference maker when someone else is giving you 50 or 60 grand more.
Sure.
But when it's close, somebody's going to choose us, I think, 8 out of 10 times. So you have to be able to do that. I think the storytelling, if you can put it together, it's made everything here a lot easier for me. We'll talk towards the end, I'm sure, about the tips you gave us, but it's made everything easier here. Working with my team, being able to, you can tell when people are getting down or things get monotonous, right? Especially during our audit season. Just pull someone aside and have the conversation about, hey, this is what we're doing here. Don't think about it as just another audit. This is what you're doing for those people. You're validating. It's amazing. It's really powerful. Really
Sure.
powerful.
Yeah. So again, there's a lot to unpack with what you said. So I thought you shared a ton of value in that. So I don't think network marketing is weird for people to go into. So a few things. So Robert Kiyosaki, the author of Rich Dad Poor Dad, says if he could do it all over again, he would actually start with network marketing because of the skills and values that you learn. And I have 3 little kids at home, and I tell them, I want them to do 3 things. If they want to go to college, if they want to go to trade school, that's on them. But I want them to do 3 things. I want them to at least be involved in network marketing for a little bit or indefinitely, whatever they choose. I want them to be involved in network marketing, do some type of retail job, and be involved in politics in one way, shape, or form. So network marketing, back to what you said regarding storytelling. Retail, because I want them to learn how people are and how people can be mean to them. I want them to learn about the good, the bad, and the ugly about people. And politics, for the strategical perspective, I actually want them to learn strategy when it comes to campaigning and if they work for a politician as an intern or whatever. I think there's a lot of value that they can learn with that. So I don't think it's weird at all. I think network marketing, yes, absolutely, when it comes to storytelling. But something else that you mentioned, so as a leader, Sean, I'm sure that the last year and a half has been more challenging than it needs to be. So, and you talked about, handling rejection from people when it comes to network marketing. So do you think that not only set you up from a storytelling perspective, but also from a grit perspective, being a leader? Do you think that you have a lot more grit now to be able to be empathetic and be able to connect with your team on a deeper level?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things that have been able. Network marketing, one for sure, right? You hear a lot of no's, right? And no's are good because you can go back and evaluate what you were doing, what you said, what you didn't say. But I think I became a CEO for the first time in 2017. And so that was my first true running company on my own. I led programs, but never led a company like this. And so I think in the beginning, like everyone else, I struggled. And I think if things were rosy from day one, I would have never been able to come through this last period of time the right way. So I think my early struggles as a CEO have really helped, right? Because everybody fails, right? Everybody makes mistakes, but you can start to put them in perspective, right? As you understand, to take everything and put it into a story. Like, why did I struggle at first as a CEO? Because I had no idea what I was getting into, right? I kind of watched what my old CEO did, but I didn't fully understand managing boards and all of that. So, I know why I failed, because I didn't have the prerequisite, because they don't train for CEO roles at business school. That's one thing people need to understand. I went to business school. I didn't learn anything that I needed to be successful here. It's really all about the people. And, empathy has always been a strong suit of mine. I've had an illness, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis since I was 9. So I got it at an early age that this is not going to be a roller coaster, right? So everybody's dealing with something. So empathy is, when we do strength finder stuff for me, that's usually very high on my list. And I think that in this role, I didn't use that early enough on. I honestly didn't use the soft skills when I first became CEO because I didn't know I should have, but the soft skills are really, really important. And empathy, especially over this period of time, people had so much going on. Just your loved one went to the store and you were worried, right? I think people start to forget how bad it was at first, and then they got to do a job and they got kids. And so I think a lot of things have set that, but then being able to tell people is really important. It's so important.
Yeah, so you had mentioned business school didn't really prepare you to be a CEO, and I appreciate you mentioned that. So we think in pictures. I mention this all the time because I think it's really important. So we think in pictures, and I always bring up the example of a dog. If I say dog, everyone listening to this podcast has a different image of dog in their mind. My image and your image are different. I'm thinking of my dog, she's a little tiny Morkie, a Maltese Terrier mix, a little 8-pound dog. Someone that's listening to this might be thinking Golden Retriever, or they may be thinking German Shepherd. They're all dogs, but they're different pictures. And I think that when we think of business school, especially a lot of people that they go out, they get their MBA. So they think of business school, they think of Hollywood, they think of social media. All of these entities create this picture of what a CEO is. And then oftentimes an executive that wants to be a CEO and they're a go-getter and there's different skill sets that they have that they think they can be a CEO, and they finally get the job, they realize the picture that they had from different entities it's not exactly the picture that they thought they signed up for. So I want you to talk about that a little bit. So when you think, now knowing what you know, when you think CEO, what are the pictures that come up in your mind?
So the first picture I see is my group, my team. So it's literally for me. That is the one thing, right? You got to realize every decision you make, right, has to involve them, but it impacts them, right? So I think of the people first, and then it's not just being the smart guy. It's not understanding the business you're in, but it's being able to understand how your business fits in the arena that you're in, right? I mean, I've been a big champion for NEACH for over 20 years, but now as CEO, I see it so much clearer now where we fit in the ecosystem of what we do. And I think as a CEO, you have to understand that. And again, I can look at finances, I can look at the monthly statements because I have all the business school training, but it's much bigger than that, right? That's so short term, right? How did we do last quarter? It's really about being able to see, where do you fit? Where is the, I always tell my team what a trade association is it's a spot where we make the environment in which our members participate in, we make it easier for them, right? That's the role of any trade association. But that environment's a moving target, right? So the same things we were doing in 1978 here in New England as NEACH, those aren't going to help people in 2023, 2024, 2025. So it's always understanding your people and then understanding how your organization has to fit. And it's sad to say for some, it's not about you at all, right? As the CEO, it's not about you. Take the failures on, share the successes, but it's all bigger picture stuff. It's the health and safety of your team and the ability for them to rise and achieve their goals. And if they do that, you're going to achieve the corporate goals that you set up. And if they don't achieve them, you're not going to achieve them. And when you unpeel all that, right, you think of, I always thought of, the briefcase coming in, sitting down, everybody comes to talk to you, and you get to make these, you get decision, but it's not what I thought it was. And it's much better than I thought it was, actually, to be honest. I'm truly enjoying it now, like 100 times more than I ever thought I would. It was such an achievement to be granted this by the board to get the position, but now it's so much better than I ever thought it would be, because you get to watch people, even the people that have left here, they go in to chase their dreams, and you're able to support them, right? If somebody's got it's just amazing. But that's the first picture I see now is the group, the team.
So while you were talking, Sean, I had all these G words pop into my head. So I think a lot of times the picture people have, they think glitzy, glamorous, glorified. And when I'm hearing you talk, I'm hearing grit and I'm hearing giving, right? Giving through servant leadership. So I feel like the pictures are different where it's not someone on a pedestal. Like you're down in the trenches with your team. You're helping them. You're unpacking different things. You're uncovering things that they're going through. You're coming up with problems and solutions. You are handling a lot of the stuff behind the scenes as well, but also being part of the communication, the storytelling piece. Like you have to have an understanding of what your team goes through. So what would you say to someone who is a go-getter? They are an executive. They may be in line for a much bigger leadership position. What would be the advice you'd give someone like that, hey, maybe they become a CEO of their organization in 2022? What would you tell them?
I would say make sure they understand what their people have going on, both at home and at work, right? And identify how you can either improve things for them, right? Because you're only going to be as successful as those people are on your team. So you need to understand that, and you do have to get it out of your head, the glitz and glamour, right? Everybody loves the business card, and my mother still has my first one on the refrigerator that I got as CEO, right? But it's so much more than that, right? It's understanding that if people are impacted by your decisions, you need to be comfortable in having them a part of the decision-making process, right? You can't be afraid to hear what your people have to say. And sometimes it's not great, right? You don't always get the best feedback on a decision you make, right? As long as you're consistent with it and you've included people in the process, that's when you're going to get, I think people are going to follow you much better than if you come in with all these, I'm going to change this, I'm going to change that. And sometimes people do that. They don't realize that change might not be good for anybody other than you saying, look what I changed my first year as a CEO, right? Get feedback on what's actually broken before you start fixing stuff. And I had trouble with that in the beginning. I had all these plans as soon as I took over. And, I learned within about 11 months that that's not how you should do things as a CEO. And I'm grateful for having screwed that up, because now I've learned a great deal from that. And the team has grown because of that. We've all kind of grown together. So I wish it was always perfect, but it's not. That's what people need to know. It's okay. It's not going to be perfect. It's not supposed to be perfect. There's so many things out of your control. What happens in people's lives. Your key person. They're lucky enough to have a baby, right? If that's your key person and you haven't trained anybody else how to help you, you got to do it, because that person needs to be at home at that time with their kids. And
Sure.
And I don't think people think about that stuff enough. And it was what you would call a soft skill, but those I think are the most important in leadership.
Sure. Yeah. So as you're talking about that, you're saying, you get into this role, and oftentimes, all right, someone gets a new role and we think success. But oftentimes someone gets a new role and it's really stress. That's the S word, not success, but stress.
Yeah.
And I mean, as a leader, so many other people are stressed in your organization because of everything going on. We have the COVID years we're going through and all these different stresses. Like every time you open any kind of news outlet, regardless of what you listen to, it's nothing but stress and negative and all this stuff. So there's this flurry of stress. And then as a leader, like you're absorbing a lot of the stress that's coming out. So Sean, how do you personally handle stress? Is there something that you do outside of work, maybe like we all have our pressure relief valves? For some it's hiking, for some it's listening to podcasts, for some it's reading books. What would be something that you do that helps you process and deal with stress?
Yeah, so I do a couple of different things. So I love listening on the ride home and ride in to different podcasts and your podcast and others that I like to listen to. But I love coaching. So I coach in the town. I coach basketball, softball. I've just gotten on to kind of a leadership role in the softball
Oh, nice.
league in town because there were some parents that had to step away, and so we're trying to build a real program here in our town. So, I just like to be at the ball field. Whether it's helping out with little league, if a friend's coaching another town, I'll help out. But I like being at the ball field, raking the field, watching the grass. That's kind of my escape. And in the winter, it's basketball. So I enjoy my Celtics. I got my season tickets with my brother-in-law, and I coach in the league over here. I haven't figured out in the late fall anything to do. So that's my goal for 2022. I have this gap between softball ending and basketball starting, where other than listening to stuff, I don't have a real outlet. So I have to figure something else out there. And I was going to look at one of those over 40 men's leagues, and I watched a couple of games, and I'm like, that my 45 and some of their 45s are really different. So I'll just keep watching.
Awesome. Yeah. You said late fall. The area you live in is one of the most gorgeous areas to be in the country regarding fall. Just go out and watch the leaves change.
No, so this is the misnomer, right? Leaves changing in themselves are beautiful, but in context, that what that means is the next 4 months are going to be terrible, right? So when the leaves start to change, it's gloomy for me. It's not nice. So, but yeah, So I got to figure something out for that time of year, because I do get a little down every year at the league turning, because I'm like, oh, softball's over, baseball's winding down, the summer's officially closed out, which is my favorite time of year. So that's always a challenging time for me. Is that little gap in between? So.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. No, and I personally like the fall because I'm thinking more of goals and stuff late fall for next year, and trying to ramp up and close out Q4 strong, but also be mindful of next year. So just regarding goals, what would be a top goal that you would have for your organization in 2022?
Oh, this is an easy one for us. So we are actually working on a project now. We're actually doing an audit of our education offerings, so our professional development that we provide to our members. We are looking at end to end, like how do we produce content? We're a little. We're not junior high with electronics here, but we're not in high school either. So we're trying to look at different ways to use video and what are the content gaps. We have some survey data. We worked with some other associations, and we know what people are expecting to learn or want to learn over the next couple of years. So we're going to be doing a lot of self auditing of what we offer to make sure that when somebody comes and looks at us, that we have something for everybody, but again, something that's meaningful that people can really use. I don't like when people say, "Oh, that was a great session." Right? I like when people say that was a great session and it impacted me, right? Because there's a difference to me. Like if you're a good presenter, everybody always gives you a good check mark, right? But what did you give them, right? So like for you, with me, I thought even if I didn't get anything, your presentation style, I just like it. Right. So yours for me was you're a great presenter, and here's the things that I took away. We got this 20 minutes a week. He told us to do story planning and all this other stuff that, so that's what we're going to look at for ourselves next year, to make sure that all of our educational events give that impact. And so I think that's going to be, it's a lot of work, but it's going to be a lot of fun. We're actually starting that project this month, which is pretty cool to kind of ramp it up into the first quarter of next year. So
that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. Great. Well, hey, so before we close out our time together, where can people find you if they're looking to get more information on what you do as an organization, on yourself? Where's the best place people can find you?
So if you're looking for general information on payments, you can either go to NEACH.org, or you can go for the Center for Payments .org. So NEACH is part of a larger group that we're putting out surveys and other stuff related to professional development. So if people want to learn more about payments, they can come right to NEACH.org. I'm on LinkedIn if you want to connect, and we can help any entity do better and make better decisions with how they move and collect money. So happy to talk to anybody that's interested.
Okay, great. So thank you for sharing that. What I'll do is I will include the NEACH.org, centerforpayments.org, and your LinkedIn account in the show notes. So as people are listening, they can just click right on the link. So thank you for sharing that. I will absolutely include that. So I feel like we had a lot of takeaways from this conversation. I feel like it was value packed. So thank you. The three biggest that I took away was how you positioned your staff not to just think about tasks, but think about the bigger vision through that storytelling. So I think that was a big piece. I also really appreciate you mentioning empathy, getting through just the nightmare of 2020 through empathy, having empathy for your team. And another big takeaway that I got is the picture of what some people think a CEO is. I think that I hope that through our conversation, you challenge people to not just view being a CEO as a glorified event, but more of a grit through giving and figuring out how do you serve people and empower them to the level of achieving those goals. So I really appreciate you really painting more of a realistic picture of what a CEO is for everyone. So thank you so much for your time, Sean. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. And thanks again for your presentation. You opened my eyes that day.
Thank
you.
I
appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Stories with Traction podcast. If you have a story that you would like to share, feel free to drop an email to matt@mattzahn.com with the subject line Stories with Traction. Also, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, where I share tons of resources on how you can be a better storyteller. Remember, if you want to persuade with power and inspire those around you to action, you must share more stories.